So, guys, I have a guest today, and I'm real excited to bring them on the stream. This is Dave and Shayla. They host a show, Reefer Revolutionaries, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a show about domestic beer, and they're here today. Dave and Shayla, how are you?
Hey, Ron.
Hi, Ron. Hi, everybody.
We are coming to you from our cabin sequestered in Mount Washington.
Oh, good.
Coming out of a digital cave.
So, of course, you guys cover domestic beer. That's what I told everybody. That's what you guys. No, of course, you talk about cannabis issues, and I wanted to have you guys on yesterday because it was 420, and that's when I reached out. But you guys were busy, and so we're having you today instead. But so first of all, let's start at the top. How's everything going for you guys? How is your quarantine treating you?
Well, there's been actually, it's been a pretty busy quarantine. Chella is helping take care of someone who needs a lot of help. She is someone who has dementia, who has Alzheimer's, who is living alone. Was just about to go into a care facility on March 20th. And it's still waiting for her. They're waiting. They have her room ready to go, residential care, but everything happened. So Chella is mostly trying to make sure she is, taking her needs. So that's been challenging.
But it's been very productive also because we, inspired by my mom's journey, started doing some interviews with doctors and nurses and administrators who work with people living with dementia and use cannabis therapeutics with them. So we have been putting together a new podcast called Cannabis Helps Dementia.
Oh, wow. So you guys have like a brand new project right now.
Yes.
We do. Ironically, speaking about internet starting podcasts, because we're all YouTubers now.
That's right.
Reefer Revolution Live was our Sunday show.
Yeah.
It's basically on hiatus. It's more of a lighthearted news show. And quite frankly, cannabis news is sort of on the back burner. In a lot of this, not to make a pun, of course, we love puns.
Except that cannabis is essential.
In many states, including here in California. The sales are adding to that. People were worried it was going to be shut down, and then it wasn't shut down here in California. So it is still in the mix as far as a medicinal aid. People who are using cannabis medicine, like patients living with dementia at a facility in Northern California, where we interviewed some people for this. What we were trying to do is put together a documentary about this subject. And you know how long those projects can be. And this is really important information. So we're using this time at home to get our podcast launched, to refocus our efforts towards educating people. Cannabis education was always the goal with Reefer Revolution, despite its lighthearted sort of triangulation with the get high on camera crowd. But we're trying to really educate people that this is really cannabis medicine. It was always our theme of the show. Taking our viewers along our journey with Chella's mom and finding that this was only medicine that did anything that alleviated the symptoms of dementia. And even in this pandemic, cannabis may not cure coronavirus, but it certainly helps people living with anxiety, with boredom. And in many ways, this plant is beneficial in this time. And you can find different ways to ingest it other than smoking it. You can vaporize it, which is better. And of course, there are edibles, tinctures, and there are many other ways to get medicine, which is how primarily people with dementia consume it, is with tinctures. So,
well, I'm not going to lie. It's been very helpful to me during these times.
Us as well. Yes.
So well, unpack it for me. What is how does it help dementia? Like, how can cannabis help dementia? Like, what are some of the elements going on there?
So cannabis nourishes the endocannabinoid system. And we have this endocannabinoid system in our body that balances every other system in the body. The endocannabinoid system really helps with how we process anxiety. People living with dementia, a lot of them have tremendous anxiety. CBD, THC, linalool, other compounds within the cannabis plant all help to address anxiety. The problem with dementia is well, aside from the obvious
There's many.
problem,
Yeah, sure.
but the biggest problem is there's no treatment. There's no effective treatment for the behavioral symptoms in any dementias, and there's over 100 types of dementia, and Alzheimer's is just the number one most diagnosed. So cannabis helps ease agitation, aggression, anxiety. It helps ease
Sleeplessness.
depression. It helps with insomnia, helps with appetite. It also helps clear away the plaques and tangles that you find in Alzheimer's better than anything else available on the market.
Yep.
And spreading this information to the whole world is really important to us, since we discovered that the United States Department of Health holds a patent on cannabinoids specifically for Alzheimer's disease, Huntington's, and AIDS-related dementia. So the United States holds a patent since 1998. 33 state departments of health have either Alzheimer's disease or other neurodegenerative diseases on their qualifying conditions lists. So why don't more doctors know about it? Because cannabis is prohibited and it's on the Schedule 1.
And they don't study the endocannabinoid system because of the Schedule 1. So Reefer Revolution was about liberty, freedom, about getting it off the schedule. Bernie was, of course, had the best plan, which Biden doesn't seem to be taking up anyway, which is unfortunate. So with all of this happening, we're trying to focus on the positive and how we can help people. And since cannabis is essential even in this pandemic, there's no reason why people in 33 states, and especially California, who are needing some relief from anxiety and other symptoms that, hey, we're all turning into some going a little bit crazy right now. We, of course, and we know you are advocates of the fine plant and all of its qualities. So we were ready to launch this soon as possible. This is now just sort of refocusing our efforts. So we're trying to not go stir crazy and get the podcast out there. So we're using, of course, Anchor FM, which is very, helpful with that. And there are a lot of people doing it. Like you say, we need the broadband. And then, of course, our sort of where we work in Hollywood is effectively shut down for the rest of time.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Really
there are millions of people in Southern California that are going, what the hell am I going to be doing for the next 2 years when you can't get insurance to make a movie or a TV show? What if somebody gets sick? Does that mean the whole production gets shut down? And some of the ideas they're coming up with, it's nuts. And so we're going to become microgreen and mushroom farmers and sell them at the farmers market, which eventually will be essential. And we're going to get out this podcast to educate people that plant medicine is really where it's at, and that people still have Alzheimer's and dementia despite this coronavirus, and we need to give them some relief.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Let's back up a little bit. Something that you just said, Chella. What do you think that the U.S. is doing with this patent that they have? I mean, is it just kind of sitting and collecting dust, or?
Yep, it is. It's just sitting and collecting dust. It may have even expired, but the fact is that they know that it helps Alzheimer's disease,
right?
And there's literally nothing else to help people living with dementia, and especially right now when everybody's home with their loved ones, they need something. They need something. I just went through a thing with our friend who had a UTI on top of having Alzheimer's disease and something wrong with her hip. So she had multiple things going on, and it was unsustainable. She was hysterical constantly. I thought she had to go to a psychiatric hospital, to be honest. And even the cannabis didn't help. It wasn't enough. So we had to make a bunch of changes last week, but people living at home with their loved ones living with dementia, you need this medicine, and there's different ratios that start with CBD, start low, go slow, but start.
Because we're not doctors.
Yeah, we're not
our
doctors.
experts, but but on the podcast, we've interviewed for our documentary. We've already interviewed a number of doctors and people in the dementia field, dementia care field. And so we're incorporating those interviews in our initial episodes of the podcast. But then we have now a whole access. Chella is on the outreach committee for the Society of Cannabis Clinicians, where you can actually find real doctors in your area, no matter what state you live in, and no matter what legality the cannabis is in. You can go to scc.org and find a real doctor who does practice with cannabis medicine in your area. And so we are, essentially trying to take all of that information that eventually will go into a documentary, but move that in and then talk to real doctors that are currently doing it. They're very excited about our podcast and participating more in expanding the knowledge. So we'll be doing more live podcast interviews in future episodes, but we have all this really good information that we're ready to launch. And essentially we're just waiting for Apple to give us the approval, and then we'll be launching a few episodes. We're up on Spotify right now, and some of the other standard, sort of smaller podcast platforms, but we're waiting for Apple to give us the go, and then we'll be able to launch 3 episodes at once and sort of promote it that way. So this is just very fortuitous that that we were able to get you. Got us out of our digital cave. We're really sort of been, with Carolyn and the podcast, I've been having some back issues, and so we've been sort of taking a hiatus from the show and really focusing inward, trying to focus, see what's going on. And we're quite frankly going to move up to Sacramento maybe in this, because Hollywood is dead for 2 years maybe. So we might as well do some lobbying, maybe get our representatives going with more focus on allowing cannabis in residential care facilities. I know they're going through quite a struggle now anyway.
Some of the folks in the chat are saying that our government prohibits studies on cannabis. It's true, because cannabis is on the Schedule 1, but there are still a few studies that show how cannabis helps dementia. This is my notebook about how these are just the studies that show how cannabis helps. So,
well, what kind of leeway do I mean, you're mentioning doctors who are kind of taking the reins on this. What kind of leeway do they have, and particularly in states where cannabis is legal? Like are they still able to kind of break a lot of ground on this?
They could if they were not self-censoring.
They are. Each one is taking their license in their hands. Every one of them. You as the patient or advocate has to bring in the information to the doctor and show them. You got to help them get out of their prohibitionist mindset, because most doctors went to school under prohibition. So you got to help bridge them from their prohibitionist mindset to where we are today, and they need help with that. So you can bring in studies, you can advocate, you can say that this is what you want, you can say, hey, let's start with CBD, hey, what's the harm? I mean, what we all know for sure is that in the 70 years of prohibition that they've been trying to find the harms, they've found none. So you can always start with the baseline question, doctor, what's the harm?
Sure. But in particular, I guess the doctors I was asking about are the ones that you guys have talked to, the ones that are interested in this work already. Like, what kind of leeway do they have? I mean, can they at the very least be publishing in the medical journals? Can they have any types of trials? Like how much are they tethered or not tethered?
So trials are limited because it's on the Schedule 1 of drugs, and you need ridiculous types of permitting for that. Anecdotal stories are being reported in journals. But those are not valued by doctors on the whole. They want double-blind placebo studies. And there happens to be one coming up this year at King's College London is doing a trial with Sativex, which is a 1-to-1 oral mucosal spray made by GW Pharma of CBD to THC, so 1-to-1. If you have any money laying around, you may want to invest in GW Pharma.
Yeah, Chella keeps telling me it's dropping. We should buy now.
We should buy.
GW Pharmaceuticals, of course, made Epidiolex, which is the CBD drug that has been the only plant-derived cannabis medicine that's been approved by the FDA. So it's really the Schedule 1. There's one Dr. Seuss.
It's $32,000 a year, and that's total fucking horseshit trash.
And it's actually been, and just in the last week, it's been, talking of cannabis news, it has been descheduled. They have Epidiolex was on Schedule 5 when they approved it. It's now been descheduled. So that particular cannabis drug is no longer on the schedule. Anybody can Any doctor can prescribe it. You can't buy it over the counter, but any doctor can prescribe it for anything now.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
So that's really the only cannabis drug that's been approved and for use in the United States. The research that's done, you have to get your weed from a dirt weed from a farm in Mississippi. The DEA this month has a slow rolling approval of other farms. They're still dragging their feet and continue to. So the schedule is really what's the impediment is. And if Donald Trump takes it off the schedule anytime soon, or does anything with cannabis, allowing anything happen, which sort of was on the realm of possibility before all of this, who knows? But we know Lev was talking to him about it. So you know how his brain works. We don't know how his brain works, but you know, the Democrats are already losing in so many ways, and so many progressive issues are being outlefted by Donald Trump. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if we ended up with Medicare for all, UBI, and descheduled cannabis before the end of all this.
It could happen. It could happen.
You know, I mean, quite frankly, it's everybody's saying, well, they need $2,000 a month. How much should we give them a month? How much? Well, and how are we going to go back to work? How are they going to put us back to work when you can get sick again and your antibodies don't work, which is a lot of what's being shown. So much is unknown about this that it's literally the future is unknown.
That's kind of in many ways the most horrifying aspect. There are still so many things that we don't know. There are still so many unknowns, and we're not really up to date on the testing or anywhere close to it. That's an understatement for where we're at. So it's like, yeah, there's just so many unknowns. You really think Hollywood's going to be closed for 2 years?
Yeah. I read
Jeez.
so when this all first started, I mean, we work so close. We work this close to each other.
This is how you work
literally.
This is how you work in Hollywood.
This is how you talk. I mean, this is just doing props together, doing set dressing, doing lighting. You're standing this close to each other. And the articles that they're talking about, what they're talking about to open us up again, first of all, insurance will have to insure everybody. And then if the insurance company will insure you, the second thing is we will have to all sign away our lives, literally. If we get COVID-19 on set, it's not their fault.
We kind of do that anyway.
Fine.
Yeah.
So the third rung that really I find irritating is that every morning before we go into work, we're going to have to be tested.
A rapid test of some kind.
Every morning. So it's going to add
and just to give a little background, which I should have done in the first place, but you guys work in costuming and makeup, right?
I do set dressing and props.
Set dressing. Okay.
And I sometimes I'm in front of the camera, but I'm also was an assistant director for a number of years. But yeah, you may remember me from the first episode of the last season of the series Lost, but that would be about it.
Yeah. So we used to work in film and television, and I've always wanted to be giving this sort of education to people and families about how cannabis helps dementia, and we figured now is the time.
Yeah, if you're going to do, I mean, it seems like, do we just sit around and wait and figure out this, or do we go into some essential work like cannabis is essential? We've been looking for a reason to get into the space anyway. And so we're looking for opportunities there in education, of course. And then, quite frankly, farming. We're probably, and because, you know, look at what happened, like you're saying with that story you had about the agriculture, that I was so pissed off about that. I was talking about it all week. That
So did you,
all of that food? It's all going to have to come down to local. We're going to have to come down to local sources. So, you know, food is essential. Cannabis is essential. Hollywood, not so essential right now, as we find Ellen, who treats her crew like crap. Sorry. Anyway, you know, the recent story coming up about how she's, you know, we're in her $28 million house doing so poorly.
so that,
Now hiring non-union crews to come in and shoot her YouTube show.
No good.
We're all
it is, yeah, right. Well, no, it is interesting that all the stories from earlier today kind of tie into like everything we've talked about. There
you go.
Yeah. So are you with me that you think farmers markets should be on the list of essential services?
Yeah, absolutely.
I quite frankly didn't realize they weren't. We have been so isolated. It's really crazy. Trying to isolate ourselves. But yeah, that's ridiculous. I thought all food things were considered essential. People were being respective of as far as what I did see in some of the news. I don't understand why that isn't happening, considering that food is just sitting there fallow and is not getting to anyone. Doesn't make
I mean, that's the problem. Well, I mean, I get the concerns that it's like, well, a grocery store, you can get everything. A farmer's market's more specialized, but it's like, yeah, but you can also get the best quality crops and stuff like that. So I think it should be essential services. I think it's important. And yeah, I mean, it having my farmer's market allowed me to make less trips to the grocery store because I would get a lot of stuff from the farmer's market. So
right, that's right. And
so,
we're actually it's like going to the grocery store. Somebody I'd seen it once on Twitter somewhere said it's like going out for supplies in The Walking Dead. You basically, you take whatever's there. Chella came home. Sprouts line was just ridiculous. It's always 3 hours long. You have to go in the morning. It's
so
a
I got
commitment.
Thai food instead.
You have to load up. So Chella got Thai food. The restaurant was open and CVS. So look, I bought smokehouse almonds and
ice cream
and ice cream from CVS. It's like a zombie apocalypse supply run.
I know I was supposed to get all of our groceries, but I just came back with nuts and noodles. You'll have to deal.
Exactly. Enjoy the soup.
Make it work.
Yeah. So it's crazy.
So where can people go to find this new podcast? Give everybody all the information they have. I know we're still waiting on the iTunes, but we're
working on the iTunes. Well, at cannabishelpsdementia.com, and that'll take you to wherever the most current and recent. Eventually, there'll be a website up there with all the bells and whistles. But right now, it's going to take you to our public anchor site. Then you can go on to Spotify, and when Apple goes up, it'll be up in there. And then you can even support the podcast there on Anchor, which is kind of cool. I don't mean to promote it so much, but literally it was kind of interesting that we were like, we got to get our podcast off. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, well, look, you can just do this. And we're like, okay, great. That's awesome. And because YouTube, of course, and all of the socials, and that maybe, who knows what's going on with Apple, but YouTube, we never could monetize our YouTube show. Our channel was always, we covered some news. So there were copyright issues, of course, but we scrubbed all that. But still, they're like, oh, the content is not advertiser friendly because it talks about cannabis in any way, shape, or form. Well, we just got our monetization literally right as soon as this pandemic started.
Nice.
We're like, oh, shit, we should go live. Kind of don't feel like it. But because our videos, they are immediately demonetized because of the content. Because it talks about cannabis. They're like, oh, nope, not advertiser friendly. So the only way we can get any is to go live. We think maybe we can start getting some super chats, but it's like, it's always Facebook doesn't allow you to promote. None of the socials let you promote any type of cannabis topic because people sell weed through Instagram. And unfortunately, I think anything with a picture of cannabis or talks about it, you're selling weed. So even education is really challenging to promote. So we're just trying to spread the word. So we're up right now on Spotify. We're going to be up on Apple. If you go to cannabishelpsdementia.com, that'll always be the most current stuff of what's going on.
That's awesome. Well, congrats to both of you on the new project. Everybody, Cannabis helps.
Out of chaos comes creation, right?
I know. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so happy for you guys. I can't wait to check out the new podcast. It sounds incredibly interesting. And thanks for giving us a preview here. So again, everybody, that's cannabishelpsdementia.com. Dave and Shayla, when this is all over, let's have another vegan enchilada night.
Oh yeah, for sure. We so missed that it was great times, and congratulations for everything that's going on in your life and your success. Your show is looking better and better, sounding better and better. It's just getting everything. Listen, you make your own reality, and you have to do that. You have to be happy and find joy, even in these times. Right?
No kidding. And
cannabis helps. Cannabis saves the world.
Totally.
Yes, it does. That's the truth. Well, thanks so much for being here, guys, and I look forward to when we can see each other in person again. I miss you all.
Totally. All right, thanks, Ron.
Oh,
Cheers.
Jilly Love. Yes, we'll do shows, just not regular.
Oh, hey, Jilly Love.
We'll be back.
I got some of our viewers in there. Yeah, I know. They're like, what the hell happened to Reefer Revolution?
Bring it back.
Yeah, for sure. We love you guys.
All right. See ya. Peace. Bye. That's great. Obviously those are friends of mine as well. And that's so cool. They got a new project. Cannabishelpsdementia.com. That's awesome. I can't wait to check it out. And great to catch up with Dave and Shella. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and